Hello, Paula, and welcome to Rushana's Mindset Lab podcast. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. So I've met you through Aston University, and I know you co-founded Aston Centre for Growth. And I think for me, what you do is all things business. That's the image I have when I think of Paula Whitehouse. So can you start by telling us what is it that you do?
I work mostly with entrepreneurs, whether they're students who have entrepreneurial ideas, or graduates, maybe starting businesses, for example, or business leaders in the community around Aston, in the region and nationally as well. And the whole idea really is to support people to be able to reach their business goals, which quite often is growth, can be other things. And I with colleagues, put on programs which help business leaders to do that. It really kind of educates people to understand what kind of tools they can be using to think about what they want, first of all, really understand and analyse where they are now, and then how they're going to achieve what they want to achieve. So that whole process, and the being able to see people go through our programs and then work out what their plan is for their business and put that into action is really what it's all about for us.
Sounds wonderful. Very good. So how did you actually get here? In terms of your journey, can you just share a little bit about your journey?
It's been a very non-traditional career route for me. And I found myself in the unusual position of being in a leadership role within a university without being an academic. And so let me describe actually how that happened. The other thing which is a little bit strange is that I'm very much leading on business initiatives to help businesses, but my background is actually in the arts. Now I see a big link there, but other people don't necessarily see what that link is. So I started off as a musician, and I'm a cellist, and I did a music degree, and that was where I started. And my first job, I knew I didn't really want to play music for a living. I sometimes would go on courses and play in orchestras a lot and things like that, and really enjoyed it, but I didn't see that as my career. So I was looking around to see, well, what can I do? And the first thing I did was go and work for an orchestra. And I thought, well, I can help make things happen. And I very much enjoyed that. And I worked for the orchestra for 5 years. I did things like put their programme books together, got people to advertise in the programme books to bring in money. I used to sell CDs in the shop, things like that, so at concerts. And so I was very involved in all of the publicity and marketing as well. I really loved that. But actually quite quickly reached the point where I'd sort of outgrown it, if you like, and I was itching to have more responsibility and do more things, and so I looked around for a new job. And then I did a couple more jobs within arts organisations, which I really loved, and developed my, actually what I was developing at the time, I didn't realise it, was problem solving skills. And that developed into me working with organisations. I was working for a kind of marketing agency specialising in the arts, and I was looking to see what they wanted to achieve and then helping them to do that. And actually that's how it's grown for me. I found that was what I was able to do. But the other thing that has happened in my career is that I've responded to kind of family need, if you like, rather than thinking, oh, I'm aiming at this particular job. And that's always worked for me. That's been absolutely fine. And so when I had young children, I gave up being employed because I couldn't quite make it as flexible as I wanted to. And at that point, I became a consultant, and I ran my own consultancy for 10 years. And the reason I did that was because I could make it as flexible as I wanted to make it. And I started with the kind of clients that I'd already been working with in my arts world. And then it kind of expanded from there. And I found myself working with a lot of small businesses, a lot of them cultural and creative industries, not all. And going into a business and as a consultant and working out kind of what they needed and really working out a way to help them was where I specialised. And that crossed over between raising funding to understanding the market and all sorts of things. which I did, and I did that for 10 years and loved that. Then I had to respond again to what was happening. It was shortly after the Great Recession, our household income had gone down. I needed to bring in more money. So I thought, right, how can I do this? And I looked around to see what jobs were available at the time, and I applied for a job at Aston University. I thought, well, that sounds really interesting. It's to do with a new research centre, and I can never turn down something that sounds interesting. So I started doing that. Anyway, that was the start of my Aston career, and I have actually never looked back. I reduced my consultancy really quite quickly, became full-time at Aston because of the opportunities at the university, and that's really where I then brought my skills working with the smaller cultural organisations into sort of wider all-sector type work that I do now.
Wow, wonderful. I had no idea that you're actually coming from the arts background. This is really interesting. So I'd like to pick up on a couple of things here. First, you started by saying that there is a link between art and business. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Absolutely. What I didn't realise until really I'd been in both worlds is that you need the business skills in order to make a success of whatever model you've got. And it might not be that you want to be profit making. A lot of arts organisations might have enterprising activities, and so they are looking to bring money in through those. But a lot of them are actually set up as charities, but they need to make a success of the model that they've got. And the skills are the same. It's really understanding whether what you've got fits what your audience, your market is looking for, whether you can have a viable way of doing it. We need to employ people to be working within our organisations. You need those skills of being able to develop people who are working in the organisations. And so there's so much of it is the same, but it might be that the only thing that's different really is perhaps your end goal. And the end goal within business is quite often to grow that business and to bring in, become more profitable. And within an organisation that perhaps is funded more in a different model, which would be partly through audience ticket sales perhaps, but a lot of it through grant funding. You still have to make a success of it, and these things that you need to do are the same. It's only that you're perhaps wanting your goals to be slightly different. And now I've realised that I'm actually really keen to get our regional arts organisations onto our programmes at Aston, because they can learn so much and really be able to get a lot out of it.
Absolutely, and it's wonderful actually to bring that idea of business and enterprise development into the world of creative endeavours. There's still, I think, that well, not idea, but stereotype of starving artists, and art should be for the sake of art as opposed to for profit, isn't it?
I agree, and arts organisations will do this in different ways, but they obviously, for me, working with creative people is a real draw, and I love to do that. So the way that I satisfy my kind of early passion, if you like, for the arts now is as a director and trustee of an arts organisation, which I am. And I've actually been working with them. It's a baroque choir that I work with, and I've been working with them on the strategy tools that we use with our entrepreneurs. And we've been able to kind of look at problems in a different way through doing that. And the barrier I came across really was the fact that the use of language is a little bit different. For example, in business, you hear people a lot perhaps talking about a new idea. They might say, well, how would you monetize that? If I say that to my arts colleagues, so it's a little bit of a dirty word. Well, why would we want to do that? We want to, improve people's lives through art, which is absolutely fine. And so modifying the language so that there's a common ground there, but you can still use the same tools and techniques to understand where you're aiming for and how you're going to get there, is perhaps where I can bridge those worlds now. And I love doing that. And I've started working also with doing pro bono work with organisations that need away days facilitating. So it's a way of getting both your artistic team and perhaps your board or your staff members together in a room for a day and really understanding the organisation from different points of view. And I do that now for arts organisations, and I love doing that as well.
Sounds wonderful. Now, I'm curious, is there anything business world can learn from the art world?
Absolutely, there is, yes. And when you're working in a business that perhaps is established and you have ways of doing things, it's difficult sometimes to be creative and to innovate. And we do know that being able to kind of build that practice of innovation within the company, the culture of innovation, is actually really important for your competitiveness in the long term. You need to change and renew and keep doing things in a different way. And people in the arts are always thinking of new ways of doing things and breaking new ground in that way, and thinking in a slightly different way about problems. And so I think to have the two together and that cross-fertilization, I think is wonderful, really.
Oh, I like the idea. Maybe we need a new maybe a position in all organizations, an artist in residence or a creative person in residence to help them with innovative activities.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Because apart from that, I think it would help people to perhaps break out of the pressure of being productive. These days, we're hearing a lot about productivity. Clearly, it's very important. In the UK, we have a problem with productivity. We don't seem to be as good at it as other nations. And so it is a very important thing. But if all we're striving for is to tick things off a list and do things, perhaps as individuals, because that might be how we interpret the productivity need, I think we don't necessarily give ourselves space then to be innovative, to be creative. And if you allow that into your life, you're going to be refreshed and able to then address the other pressures that are the to-do list. I think it's very important for individuals as well as for organizations.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Okay, so just moving on to that entrepreneurial journey, when you said you responded to the needs of the family, I really like it how you said it with such an ease, without perhaps overly emphasizing it or demonstrating a lot of fear, because starting a business is a scary thing to do. How did that work for you?
I think the family is always very important to me, as it is to many people. And I realized, in fact, it was when my daughter was about to go to school, and I realized that I would be not having so much time in the day with her, or that she'd have a routine set in stone, and I would need to work around that, and that I wouldn't see her as much as I was able to with what I was doing before. And so it seemed like the most important thing, actually, and there was never any doubt in my mind that what I was doing at the time would work. I just knew it wouldn't work, so I'd have to do something else. And I, like many people, had, in the course of what I was doing, had built up contacts and had worked very effectively with a number of organisations. And it seemed to me that perhaps, I kind of had that foothold with potential clients, which is the way that it worked. And I know that many people who have sort of worked in that kind of consultancy arena have perhaps come out of the workplace and utilised that contact book that they had. And so I didn't feel as if I was starting from scratch. I felt as if I was starting with a network, and I just needed to work with them in a different way. And so that's what I did. But one of the things of working like that, whether you're self-employed or whether you're kind of setting something up and growing it, is that it's almost impossible to say no to opportunities. And so actually I found very soon I was very busy with things, and then the challenge is looking at those things you're doing and saying, well, are they the right things to be doing? Are you making the impact you want to make? Are you perhaps on the trajectory you want to be on? And then sort of working. So I had to work that out as I went along, and I think that's probably not uncommon.
Absolutely. And I still do think that it takes a lot of courage to start your own business. Do you have any entrepreneurs maybe in your family? Is that something you grew up with?
No, not at all, actually. I don't. But in my my career up to that point, I had worked a lot with people in very small businesses or who actually were sort of freelancing. And I'd had a lot of contact also with people who were music teachers, and that's quite often a freelance career, or you do that. I talked recently actually to somebody who's a composer, and I had a really interesting conversation with her, and she said, composers really need these business skills that you teach at Aston. And I was saying, yes, they do. We need. How can we sort of develop something which will help give them those skills while they're training as composers, because you don't necessarily get that within the traditional kind of music school or conservatoire type environment. So I think that's very important. But I can't remember where I was going now with that.
Yes, no, I was saying that it takes courage, isn't it? It's quite scary to start a business where you don't have a regular income that's almost guaranteed, and you are almost on your own.
Yes, I do agree. I think that's right. Whatever move I've made into something new, I've always had a bit of a fallback position for myself. And at that point where I decided to become a consultant, my fallback position was I can actually go back into employment if I need to. If I, obviously the financial pressure is usually the thing which is perhaps pressing. And if I was in that situation, actually that's what I would have done. And I thought to myself all along. And actually by that point in my career, I had mentored a number of people who were trying to get into employment or who were moving jobs. And that's something which I'd done. And so I thought quite a lot about that. And I think helping people who are trying to make a move or do something different is really interesting, because you do come across those barriers, and challenges, and it does take, you need to kind of have that impetus to take that step. You need to be motivated to do it, and what is it that helps you to do that? And also, if you're going into a different sort of employment, you're going to get knockbacks. You're going to get people saying, no, actually, you haven't got this job, we've given it to somebody else. And you never really know why. And what I realized over time when I was helping people with this and mentoring people, a lot of the time it's not because you weren't good enough for that, or it's simply because there was a strong field of people and somebody else also had the type of skills and experience that you had that bring you to that, and maybe something extra as well. You don't know what that is. You never know who else you're almost up against, if you like, in that situation. And so it can be completely soul destroying, and until you can perhaps not take those knockbacks as anything negative about you as a person, because it's not. You kind of haven't won that one, but you'll win another one. And because I'd worked with people like that, I knew that eventually they always got into what they wanted to get into, which was brilliant. Although some people did take a long time and apply for loads of things before they got their next step. And it's hard. I think it is nice if you've got somebody helping you along that journey.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I agree. Paula, one thing you mentioned is about creatives having those marketing and business skills, and it's not something that is taught, say, in the music school. And I actually observed that in a lot of other professions. So I've just recently qualified as a coach, and you get to know other coaches, and the idea there is, okay, I'll get my coaching qualification, I'll set up an account on, say, Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'll just post some inspirational quotes, and that will be enough to fill my diary with clients. And what happens is all these people, they end up often being heartbroken, because even if you're the best coach in the world, and you rarely are at the start of the journey because you're obviously just gaining your experience, yes, without marketing skills, it's unlikely that you will become, fully booked right away. So that idea of almost making peace with marketing, perhaps, is just so important across the board. It's not probably just art specific. It's all self-employed areas of business specific.
I completely agree, and it's more than just marketing, and perhaps it's also, this is perhaps a mindset, isn't it? It's how you think of that particular task or area of work to do with what you're doing. And the key thing for me is to think, actually, who is it you want to be speaking to, or who you want to engage with, and what are they going to get out of this? And how are they going to find you? And if you can almost think about it from their point of view, put yourself into their mind and actually think about that, and then make it as easy, kind of facilitate that to happen. And make it that when they, whatever interaction they have with you, whether it's your website, whether it's listening to something you've put up there, or whether it's in fact contacting you, they're getting the experience you want them to get, and they are then getting that kind of authentic type experience of what you want to put across. And I suppose you're building trust, aren't you? Now, I'm sort of putting it in terms of the individual, but actually, if you think in terms of the individual, then your communications about what you're doing are going to speak to them in the best way. When you're perhaps developing a product or a service which you want to go out to many people, you then get to the point where you're going to segment that, and you're going to think, well, there's more than one type of person who I want to engage with here, and you have to really go into quite a lot of detail, and that's part of the marketing function. But it's a fascinating thing to do, and if you understand your audience or your market better, you're actually going to enjoy what you're doing more as well, because it will all fit better and it will make sense as a sort of whole endeavour.
Absolutely. And you shared that you observed a lot of the happy ending stories where, people manage to get through to where they wanted to get. And sometimes it takes a long time. And I guess I'm wondering, from your point of view, what if you just keep trying and trying and it's just not happening? You're not getting your lucky breakthrough. What's your view on that?
That's really hard, isn't it? Because I think you have to be a very particular type of individual to believe you're going to get your happy ending. But if that happens to you, it's just so human to get worn down and just think, oh, I'm never going to be able to do it. I think it's really hard. And I think what you have to do is have people around you, just a kind of like small circle of people that you trust, that you can actually be quite open with about how you're feeling about that and what your experiences are, and they'll support you, and that's what you need. It can, maybe even one person sometimes, just talk a little bit of support, but also kind of good sense, and is there something that's going wrong here, and do we need to change direction a bit? It's so hard to do it on your own. I do think you need to be discussing it with other people, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So just fast forward to the time where you applied to Aston University. I'm just really curious also, I guess, did you know other people who work in academia? Because it's not, I don't think anyone would just go and, I'll try and apply for university. Or was it something that you were interested in to start with?
I didn't know anybody working there. When I was working for one of the arts organisations in Birmingham, I went to Aston a couple of times to the Freshers' Fair and put a stand up there trying to get people to engage in the arts, and understand about the arts in Birmingham. So that's the only time that I've been. Apart from, I also worked with, there used to be a cinema at Aston called Triangle. Oh. And I worked with them, helping them with their marketing. This shows how many years I've been working in this area now, because that was such a long time ago. So I was aware of it, I liked, I'd always had a good feeling about it. No, I'm afraid I was literally just looking for something to bring in money that would be of interest to me, where I thought I could probably add value myself. And actually it came up and I thought, yes, I've always kind of thought that a university environment would be really stimulating. And actually, as soon as I started working at Aston, I was working with the most international group of people that I'd ever worked with, so the students and the staff, which I absolutely loved. And that's because I haven't worked anywhere apart from the UK. It's the first time really I'd had such wide range of people to work with closely, and I just loved it. So that was, I think, one of the hooks for me, the fact that once I was in that environment, I wanted to stay.
This is wonderful how a bit of curiosity, open mind, and searching for a bit more stability financially actually brought you to doing some wonderful things at Aston, starting, co-founding this enterprise center and leading amazing initiatives. Wow. So how was that journey? into building up that the Enterprise Centre?
Yes, this was really an opportunity that came to us. It came to my colleague, Professor Mark Hart, which was a programme run by Goldman Sachs. They approached Aston to do it. So there was a need to very quickly establish something new at Aston. And he called on me to do this. And I, as always in my career, I've never been able to turn down something that looked like an interesting opportunity. As, whatever it is, I have trouble saying no, and I'm always glad I didn't say no. So I said yes, and that was the thing which kind of took me. It was an all-consuming thing at the time. So luckily, my consultancy clients were dwindling, so I could just keep on top of that and finishing that off as well. So it started with one programme, which Goldman Sachs were starting in the UK, called 10,000 Small Businesses. They had chosen Aston as the place to come to because of our leading researchers. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. That was literally all that happened, and the person who couldn't say no. So I then got engaged in all of this, and what a fascinating thing to do. What we have with this programme is kind of a combination of completely different cultures. You have the funder, which is a global investment bank. You couldn't get bigger corporate than that. You have the university sector, where we're interested in educating people, and you have small businesses who obviously want to progress with what they're doing, don't necessarily think other people can help them do that, particularly an investment bank and a university, and you get the three combined, and I'm kind of in the middle of it, trying to make everything work, which is really fun actually. And it's always been, that programme itself has always been brilliant, and what we've done at Aston is understood how that programme worked and then looked to see gaps where businesses weren't eligible for that. Actually, what can we put in place for businesses in the region that also need a similar sort of support? And it's grown and grown in that way.
Wonderful. That's really interesting. So where you said there's 3 parties with that program, did you have to do a lot of adjusting your language, the kind of language you use to one party or the other, like you did in the arts world?
Yes, there is a certain amount of that, absolutely. And I think that's one of the ways it's helpful that I'm part of the team as a non-academic, because particularly with businesses and the leadership and management education we provide, we have to base it on theory, because we're a university, we have researchers, we have all this knowledge that we want to use, but we can't put it across in the way that you would to an academic audience or to a student audience, because it has to be very practical, and the businesses have to be able to, obviously they can spare a certain amount of time for the programme, they can't be doing academic studies. That's just not what they're there for. They're there to do something with their business, and so it has to be immediately applicable for them. And so we're working with people who are really quite esteemed academics who have been researching for many years and teaching as well within a university context, and suddenly that needs to be then conveyed to a different sort of audience, which is the small business audience. And yes, that's interesting. That does need a different use of language and a different approach of putting things across. So the theory is almost invisible actually in the way that we do it in the end, but it's important that it's there.
Of course, yes. Okay, wonderful. So my final question, well, actually final 2 questions, sorry. What does future hold for you in terms of your business journey, professional journey rather?
That's a really interesting one. I have no idea, but then I've never had any idea. And I'm reasonably confident that some more opportunities will come along, and somebody will be looking for somebody to pick it up, and I'll be the one who'll do it, I'm afraid, because that's just what I do. I'm very, very content at Aston for now. My career now recently has led to me working actually nationally with academics at other business schools, and so that's part of my work which has just developed in the last 2 to 3 years. And that's really, really it was challenging to begin with, but now I'm kind of working out new ways of working. And so I'm very, very interested in that and want to develop that more as well. And so that's bringing more business schools kind of into our world, if you like, in the way that we're doing our leadership and management education. So I love that. So I see that as partly the future. But the other thing will be something which I have no idea about at all yet. I think that's what's always happened. And if something comes along that I haven't been involved in before and I get the opportunity to do it, I just know I'll do it because I just cannot resist. So you're going to have to ask me in the future what that thing was.
Yeah, and you just recently met Rishi Sunak on his visit to Aston University.
Yes, because we launched the government's Help to Grow management programme at Aston. We were one of the first business schools to actually start delivering it. I'm the National Curriculum Director for that, and that's one of the ways in which I've been working with people at business schools all over the UK. And yes, Rishi Sunak came to Aston for that. It was fascinating. He was so keen to actually work with the businesses that we set it up in a way that we could, obviously we didn't have very long with him, but we had him in the classroom, and we used the business model canvas because it's a really nice tool to get to grips with and very useful for the businesses. So we had them up there, and we got him actually working on one of these with one of our participants. So that was great fun, actually. And he's very, very interested in this programme. He had signed off a very large amount of funding for it for 4 years, and that's where we are now. In fact, in terms of his job, he's moved on, but we are running the programme and we're only a year into it, and so many more businesses will get the benefit of that, which is brilliant. Really, really pleased about that.
Sounds like a wonderful and meaningful success. Thank you for sharing this. So that brings me to my very final question. So you talked a lot about I guess soft skills, well, and practical skills as well, like flexibility and open mind, and being able to speak to the audience in their language. Is there any other, well, that's certainly what I picked up for me. Is there anything else that you would recommend to someone who is perhaps willing to follow similar routes, similar professional career or business career for the matter?
Yes. Being open-minded, I think, is helpful. Something I've learned, which I didn't understand to begin with, is that when you're working with other people, you tend to be working on a project or something, and you're discussing whatever the business is that you've got with that person. And it took me a little while to realise that as a person, you bring yourself to something. So you're not only concentrating on the task in hand, you also have this context for you personally, and lots of people have a lot of stuff going on, which might be good and might be bad. And you can't help that. Obviously, everybody we tend to work with is very professional in situations. But I think what I began to understand a few years into my career is that the person sitting opposite me at the table when we're talking about something could have something going on in their lives which is really quite difficult, or, you know, they're a whole person basically. And was really to be able to acknowledge that. And you don't expect to get people to talk about things. I think it just was a bit of a switch in my mind that we're not just working on this thing, we're people. And perhaps one day somebody in the team won't be as effective as on other days. And I will assume, well, yes, it might be they've got something going on, rather than, oh, you're not being productive, what's, you know, and ask them about it. So that made a difference to me, actually understanding about sort of people. So I think really thinking, empathizing with other people, even if you're not, you know, they might not want to open up about things, and that doesn't matter. It's knowing that people are people and there are all sorts of things going on in their lives. I think that's really, really important. And another thing is that if you can over time begin to understand what your own strengths are, that is really quite helpful. It's not easy, actually, and I think a lot of us take a long time to work out what our strengths are. For me, it was being able to assess a problem and come back with a bit of clarity about potential solutions. And I didn't know I could do that to begin with, and it's something I, as a consultant, obviously you kind of have to do it. That's the job in a way. But now it's a very useful thing that I apply to all sorts of situations, and particularly a kind of situation where somebody might not know what they need you to do. But if you can suggest to them something that would be a way of starting to find a solution, then I think that's so just for me, that was something I was good at, but it took me a long time to work it out. And so as your career develops, if you have people who are really quite insightful, then why not sort of work with them to say, well, actually, what do you think it is that I really bring to this? And because sometimes somebody holding up a mirror in that way can just be really helpful. Because if you try and pursue a path that doesn't really play to your strengths, it's quite stressful. You know, if you feel that you can add value with what you're doing, it's much more sort of enjoyable for everybody, really. And really, I think the other thing for me, apart from not turning down opportunities, because that can lead to all sorts of great things, is to allow that creativity in your life, allow yourself space for it. If I go through a particularly busy period and I find that when I'm supposed to be relaxing, and I know this happens to a lot of people, I find it impossible. I'll pick up a really difficult Sudoku to do or something like that because I absolutely cannot turn off. And that's like a common problem, I know. Then I know I probably need to, on the train home, I need to just look out the window and daydream, and I need to just allow myself that time and force myself to do it. And then that unlocks your creativity, because if you're just ploughing away head down trying to do one thing after another, it's very difficult to stop that. And then you never get the best results. So I think that would be my thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paula. Really insightful, very, very interesting journey. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that.
Thank you, Rushana.